Maria checks her phone. Bank notification. Overdraft fee, $35. She stares at the screen. She didn't even know the account was empty. The coffee she bought yesterday? That triggered it. The Netflix charge this morning? Another $35. 2 transactions, $70 gone. She's a freelance designer, makes $47,000 a year on paper. Sounds middle class, right? But here's what the numbers don't show. Maria pays $840 in overdraft fees annually. That's 1.8% of her gross income, a tax that doesn't exist for people with $5,000 sitting in checking. You want to know why you can't get ahead? This is why. The banking system has created a 2-tier economy, one where the broke subsidize the comfortable, and nobody's talking about it. Maria tried Mint, she tried YNAB, she tried the envelope method her grandmother swore by. Failed every time. Not because she's bad with money, but because the advice she's following was designed for a world that no longer exists. Then she stumbled on something. A loophole so simple, Wells Fargo would ban it if they could. But before we get there, you need to understand how deep this goes. Let's talk about 2026 America. 48% of Gen Z is living paycheck to paycheck. That's nearly half of all young adults. They want to save. They're trying. 72% took active steps to improve their money situation last year. They downloaded the apps, they read the articles, they cut back on spending, and they're still broke. The average Gen Z person carries over $94,000 in personal debt. 41% literally cannot handle a $2,000 emergency. One blown tire, one root canal, one emergency vet visit. That's the difference between surviving and spiraling. Financial advisors call this financial avoidance. People get so stressed they stop looking at their accounts. They let debt grow like mold in the dark. But here's what those advisors won't tell you. This isn't a behavior problem, it's a design problem. The system requires you to fail. Here's the number nobody talks about. Banks in the United States extract $34 billion annually from overdraft fees. Not from millionaires, not from trust fund kids, from people with less than $1,000 in their accounts. The top 5 banks alone pulled in over $12 billion last year from accounts that averaged $347 in balance. You read that right. If you're broke, you pay more to be broke. It's a poverty tax with a corporate logo. And it gets darker. In 2019, there was a proposed regulation. It would have required banks to provide real-time balance updates. Simple stuff. You swipe your card, you see the charge instantly. Would have prevented 60% of all overdrafts. The banking lobby killed it, quietly. No headlines, no outrage, just a memo and a donation. Because chaos is profitable.
Now let's talk about the advice you've been following. The 50-30-20 rule. You've heard it 1,000 times. 50% of your income for needs, 30% for wants, 20% for savings. Sounds reasonable, right? Here's the problem. That rule was created in 2005 by Senator Elizabeth Warren, back when rent was 30% of median income, back when you could actually divide your paycheck into neat little buckets and have money left over. Fast forward to 2026. Median rent in the top 20 metro areas is now 52% of median income. In cities like Miami, Austin, and Seattle, it's closer to 60%. You do the math. If half your income goes to rent and another 20% goes to utilities, groceries, and transportation, where's the 30% for wants? Where's the 20% for savings? It doesn't exist. The formula isn't wrong because you're failing. The formula is wrong because the economy broke it. Rent increased 40% between 2015 and 2025. Wages increased 12%. But every financial literacy program still teaches the 50-30-20 rule like it's gospel. They frame a systemic collapse as a personal failure. You're not bad with money. You're playing a game where the rules changed and nobody updated the manual. But wait, it gets worse. 70 million Americans are doing gig work. That's 36% of the entire workforce. Uber drivers, DoorDash couriers, freelancers, contractors, the entrepreneurial class, they called it back in 2019. Freedom, flexibility, be your own boss. Here's the reality. The average rideshare driver earns $14.73 per hour after expenses. That's below minimum wage in 26 states, and their income isn't stable. It's chaos. One week they make $200, the next week $1,500. Your brain can't budget unpredictability. Research shows the average weekly income standard deviation for gig workers is 340% higher than W-2 employees. That's not a typo. 340%. Imagine trying to plan your groceries when your paycheck swings by $1,000 week to week. And yet, every piece of financial advice assumes a steady paycheck. Just automate your savings. Transfer 20% every payday. Great, except when your payday is Tuesday for $87, Thursday for $340, and nothing on Friday because the app crashed. The gig economy isn't a bug, it's a feature. Silicon Valley sold you flexibility. What they delivered was the largest unregulated labor force since the 1920s. No benefits, no stability, pure extraction. And when you can't save, they tell you to budget better. Here's the smoking gun. Between 2020 and 2025, Uber, DoorDash, and Instacart collectively spent over $200 million lobbying to avoid reclassifying workers as employees. They needed you to stay unstable, because the moment you have benefits, the moment you have predictable income, the entire model collapses. They don't want you to succeed. They want you to survive, barely. So here's the question. If the system is rigged, if the advice doesn't work, if the banks profit from your failure, what do? Maria found an answer, not in a course, not in a $500 budgeting app, in something so small, so simple, it slipped under the radar. Every time she got paid, any payment, she moved $25 into a separate savings account. That's it. No percentages, no complicated formulas, just $25, manually, every single time. Sounds ridiculous, right? $25 won't change your life. $25 won't pay off your debt. $25 won't stop the system from crushing you. Except it did. Here's why. The $25 rule doesn't work because it's mathematically brilliant. It works because it's too small to trigger the banking system's predatory mechanisms. It slips through. No minimum balance violations, no overdraft risk, no automatic transfer failures. It's invisible. And more importantly, it rewires your brain. When you're broke, you think of yourself as someone who can't save. That's your identity. Every budgeting failure reinforces it. Every overdraft fee proves it. Every time you move money into savings and then pull it back out 3 days later for gas, you internalize the story. I'm bad with money. But when you succeed at saving $25, something shifts. You become someone who saves, not someone who tries to save, someone who actually does it. And that identity change is everything. Maria did this for 7 months. She saved $1,200. Not life-changing money, but for the first time in her adult life, she went to dinner and just ordered. She didn't check her account, she didn't calculate the menu, she didn't make an excuse to skip dessert. That's freedom. Another person I spoke with saved $2,000 in 8 months. Their laptop died. They pulled $1,400 from savings, bought a refurbished one, still had $600 left. They told me the crazy part wasn't having the money, it was how calm they felt. No panic, just, okay, I'll handle this. That's what financial confidence looks like, and the system hates it. Because here's the truth. Banks make money when you're anxious, when you're checking your balance before every purchase, when you're one bad day away from an overdraft. That anxiety keeps you dependent. It keeps you paying fees. It keeps you trapped. The $25 rule breaks that cycle, not because it's a lot of money, but because it builds a habit so small the system doesn't see it coming. You're not trying to save 20% of your paycheck. You're not following a formula designed for 2005. You're just moving $25 over and over until the number in that account starts to matter. Research on gig workers found that those with even $500 in savings were 3 times more likely to scale their income the next year. Why? Breathing room. They could turn down bad clients. They could take risks. They could afford to wait for better opportunities. The $25 rule creates that breathing room, one deposit at a time. So here's what you do. Open a new savings account right now. It has to start at 0. Fresh start. Name it something that matters. The Vault, Freedom Fund, Finally Not Broke account, whatever keeps you engaged. Next, choose a threshold. If you're doing gig work, maybe it's every time you make over $150 in a shift. If you have a regular paycheck, it's every payday. Be specific. Then, and this is critical, do not automate it. You need to manually transfer that $25 every single time. You need to watch the number grow. You need to create the neural pathway that says, I just got paid, now I save. Do this repeatedly. 3 times in 1 week? That's $75. Real money you didn't have before, and infinitely more than the zero you're saving now. People will tell you $25 a week is only $100 a month. They're right. You know what else? It's the habit. Once you're comfortable with $25 disappearing, you start wondering, could I do $35? Maybe $50 on a good week? I've seen people go from saving nothing to $200 a month just by starting here. Don't compare your $200 to someone else's $50,000. You're competing with the version of you from last month who had zero. Don't get discouraged if you have to withdraw money for an emergency. That's what it's for. You're not failing. You're succeeding at what savings is supposed to do. And don't wait until you're making more money. That day never comes. Start now with what you have. The difference between having zero and having $500 isn't $500. It's the difference between panic and peace, between feeling screwed and feeling like you can handle it, between being trapped in a system designed to extract from you and finding a crack in the wall. The banks won't tell you this works. The financial literacy programs won't teach it, because the moment you realize you don't need their apps, their courses, their complicated formulas, you stop being profitable. You become the thing they fear most. Someone who saves, someone who has options, someone who escapes. But if you think this is the only trap they've set, you're wrong. Because while you're busy trying to save $25, there's a much bigger game happening in the background, one that makes overdraft fees look like pocket change, and it's already started.